In 1972, three military families combined their faith and vision to see a spirit-filled church in what was then called downtown Bellevue on 24th and Franklin Street. That church became known as Bellevue Assemblies of God. Just 2 years later, Pastor Sam and Jeannie Mayo led the church through a season of growth and purchased the 17-acre site on Harvell Drive. Almost immediately, funds were raised and a house of worship was built largely on volunteer basis. Worship services began in that building in 1977. In 1989, after 15 years of pastoring Bellevue Assemblies of God, the Mayos transferred to another state. Associate Pastor Gary Hoyt and his wife Lori became the new lead pastors. As the church continued to thrive, the leadership sensed God was directing them to secure financing to complete the East Sanctuary project. This mammoth project was a giant step for the church body, who always remembered that God was their source.
August 25th, 1991, Dedication Sunday of the new sanctuary at Bellevue Christian Center.
The project was finished in August of 1991 as many celebrated the goodness of God's faithfulness through the years. It was at this time Bellevue Assemblies of God became known as Bellevue Christian Center.
And I pray that we will never forget this service. Lord, not because of the lights or the sound or the colors or the choir or the music or the crowd or anything else.
Over 20 years later, after bearing witness to many life-changing stories, God gave Pastor Hoyt a vision of streams flowing out from the church and into the entire city. The sense was that God wanted to use BCC to saturate every area of the city with His heart. In 2013, the Greater Things campaign was launched to carry out that vision. Since its inception, Bellevue Christian Center has had a rich history of people who have sacrificed in order to see God's kingdom advanced. There are also countless stories of how God has provided, as well as many others of lives that have been changed. Here are a few of those stories.
So our parents have modeled giving for us and serving in our churches. We have a legacy that helps us decide how to live our own lives, and I think that's really valuable.
When we first got married, we wondered, well, what are we supposed to do? Do we tithe? Do we do offering? What parts of these do you do? And only to discover you just do it all. And God makes a way for you to make that happen.
There's people in need. There are people that need to know Jesus. And any way we can help make that happen, I think, is important. We don't all have the same gifts, right, but certainly we can all do something. Not everybody's a pastor, not everybody's a worship leader. There's something we can do.
People were doing extra jobs. They were selling things so that they could be a part of that happening, because the excitement over what God was doing and the people who were coming to know Christ was so intense. When we got in this building and that continued, the explosion of God's blessing of people coming to know Christ through our bus ministry and many other ways, the youth ministry, it was clear we couldn't stay in this space, so we needed to move on to the next piece. So again, people said, well, we got to make this happen. And again, people gave out of not all of their abundance, but actually sacrificing things that they could have benefited by.
Had that not happened, you think of the literal thousands of lives that have been touched through that space over there, that structure, that building, where God has met people and changed their lives. If that had never happened, would those lives have been impacted? I think the same thing is in store for the new sanctuary and the renovations we've done in the sanctuary. I think just like it's been used so far, I think God's got even greater things.
When my family moved here, I was like 5 years old. I know that they looked, when they were trying to decide on what churches they were going to go to, they wanted to find a place that had a really strong youth ministry. And Bellevue Christian Center really provided a home for the Kaup family. Being in junior high and high school years and clearly running away from God, and I can remember Sunday mornings, because my parents still faithfully, you got to get up, you got to go to church. There would be these random times where Pastor Hooker would come and find me. He would grab both of my shoulders and look me square in the eyes, and he would say, "Young man, how you doing with God?" It wasn't this feeling of being judged. It was this feeling and this sense that there was somebody who was fighting for me and who believed in me. There was opportunity for me to begin serving, but Bellevue Christian Center has given me a place to actually be active in that, to step into a role where now I can be the man that God's called me to be. Probably the best thing that Bellevue Christian Center has given me is my wife, and we now have a couple kids of our own, with a third on the way, and the church continues to be a home for me. It continues to be a place where hope is found. It continues to be a place where people fight for my family now, and it's providing a place where my kids now are being taken care of, are being poured into, are being loved on and believed in. And it's a place that I know that as my children grow and as they go through hard times, there's going to be people who are going to look them in the eyes and say, "How are you doing with God?" Because they love them and they care about them. And someday I hope to see them have a place where they can live their purpose.
We came because of our children. And over the years, they have just stayed involved. They were involved in all the youth programs that went on. Sprino, everything it was called, they were in it. Because of the church, they are all in. The people that taught Sunday school, that just ministered to them and guided them and helped them. And I think even though we did what our part is trying to bring them up in a Christian way, I think because of the people in the church body itself played an influence on their lives also.
Different times when we gave more than tithes, and we started out doing that because we challenged one another to give more than a tithe. He said, "We'll never be able to do that." God always provided.
Being a family with 4 children, all young, we decided we wanted to tithe, and I thought there's no way we can do all this and live the way that I thought we should live. But God was faithful in all that, and we started giving. God met every need, no matter what it was. God was always there, and so He's always provided for us, no matter what.
No matter where I was at, I feel like that I didn't belong, and that I carried that with me, and it affected everything that I did, from friendships to the way that I acted, to the way that I viewed the world. I was just really struggling, and I was dealing with a lot of confusion and heartache, and I reached out to Andy and Michelle Kaup. I told them everything that I was going through, and during that moment I remember thinking, this church is my family. My very first junior high service as a leader here, I left the church and I went home and I got my journal and I wrote, "This is where I belonged the whole time." It's because of Bellevue Christian Center that gave me a chance to speak, that gave me a chance and trusted me to lead students. They saw in me what I didn't yet see in myself. I want students to encounter God the way that I encountered Him, no matter how loud or quiet or crazy or reserved. I want them to know, you belong here. And that's what Bellevue Christian Center was for me. No matter how outside I felt, they always let me know, you belong here.
So I came and I started what I call the back row ministry. I sat in the very back row. So when I left the church that day, I walked out, one of the first ones, and I met Lonnie Hyder at the door. And the first thing he asked me after my name was, "Do you play softball?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "We're having tryouts here tomorrow for our church team." I got saved in March of 1994 at a men's retreat, but I felt a calling that I should go because my work, I was so stressed. I was such a workaholic. I was very self-centered. I didn't like people. I didn't like to talk to people. Just felt I've got to do something because this is out of my control. I need to recognize something better. It changed that. I went back home and I sat my boys down in the bed and I said, "I want you to know something I did this past weekend." And I said, I gave my life to God. And when the kids said, "We saw you and we heard what you said that day in the bedroom," we figured in 3 months it would go away and you'd be what you used to be, but you were a different dad. So I love my boys, their wives, all the kids. It's just more than I could have ever asked for. More than I could have ever asked for. See that moment from March of 94, just the ripple effect. You know how that affects the whole family. And it just, God is so good. He's blessed us in ways. And just to see that is just, what a wonderful legacy.